Okay, I'm back for chapter 2. Same night. No, I'm not wearing the same sweatshirt for a second day. I love reading, and Netflix sucks right now. There's like nothing good on, and they're all like sappy Christmas movies, and they make me sad. So I would much rather read to you. And I could also be wrapping presents, but I got time for that later too. So anyway, here we go. I got coffee, which I may totally regret later. I have homemade Chex Mix. Delicious. And this. The most amazing thing I have found in a very long time. Hold on. Oh, I kind of a bad bite. Anyway, they're Whoppers. You know how much I love Whoppers? And they're mint chocolate. And I know you love mint. I only let myself have like 4 or 5 a day, because I could eat the entire bag of them. I'll save you some, because there is no way that you wouldn't love these. Okay. Enough about me and the amazing Whoppers and the Chex Mix. Here we go. Chapter 2. His Separate Shadow. I now think of my survival as my father's first miracle. Dr. Noakes himself named the event miraculous once he woke up and washed his face and remembered who he was. The second, I suppose, is that the doctor turned out wrong about the brain damage. I'm happy to say none surfaced until I entered 10th grade and signed up for plane geometry. Like plane as in like flying plane geometry. But since I can still feed myself and grind out a sentence in English, you won't hear me complain. Oh, come here. Oh, we have a visitor. Say hello. Dad's third miracle, and one of the most startling, if not consequential, happened in the middle of the night. In the middle of North Dakota, just after I turned 11. Oh, stop it. It was the trip I shot my first goose. A medium-sized snow. That's what you call a goose. We were staying at August Schultz's place, 4 hours west to the Great Plains, hunting near the homestead Dad grew up on and still quietly longed for. The goose was a joyous occasion, and for a while we could all speak to each other again. That is, Dad and Davy could speak again. Swede and I rarely quarreled, but I never held opinions in those days, and hers were never wrong. I do remember that the tension in the car going out was so potent, I fell asleep as soon as I was able. A veteran bystander to hard moments, I knew they went quicker when you were unconscious. Davy was 16 then, a man as far as I was concerned, with a driver's license and a knockout 4-inch scar down the right forearm. And Dad's own iron in his spine, meaning he was tough. That night, they sat in the front seat of the Plymouth, green-grilled from the dash light, not speaking at all. We were late getting started, as happened often, because Dad had to lock up the school after the football game. Swede and I yawned in the back seat. Boxes of shotgun shells stacked at our feet. The sky spat ice and water. Come on. It rode up on the windshield, and from time to time, Dad pulled over so Davy could jump out and scrape it off. Oh, that is bad. Hey, stop, please. You're going down. You're too distracting right now. The Plymouth had a worthless heater. Swede and I rode cocooned in gray army blankets and stocking caps. The two of us scratchy as horsehair. 20 miles into the trip, she slipped off her rubber boots. Then I felt her toes creep up against my hip. Oh, they were cold. I pulled them into my lap and rubbed them while up front Davy opened a thermos, poured coffee into the lid, and without looking at Dad, handed it to him. Still not a word spoken between them. The road beat backwards under us. In a few minutes, Swede's toes felt warm, and she was breathing evenly through her nose. I kept my hand tented over her feet, pigeon-toed there in my lap, laid my head back against the seat, and slipped into sleep as well. Before dawn settled among decoys in one of Augustus' barley fields, Dad and Swede lay on their elbows, side by side, the two of them whispering under a swath. Davy and I took the opposite flank, he with his clawed-up Winchester goose gun. I was too young to shoot, of course, and so was Swede. So we were there purely, as she said, for seasoning. In all the years since, I don't remember a colder morning. Rain can out-freeze snow. We lay between soaked ground and soaked swaths with a December-smelling wind coming over our backs. As the sky lightened, we heard geese chuckling on the refuge away to the east. The rag decoys puffed and fluttered. I yawned once, then again so hard my ears cracked. Davy said, "Don't go to sleep right now on me, buddy." He could say it. He wasn't cold, though his gloves were nothing but yellow cotton. He could handle an icy shotgun in evident comfort. I had on his outgrown leather mitts and 2 pair of wool liners, yet my fingers were clenched and bloodless. It seemed to get colder as the day came on, when Davy said softly, "Old Rube, I could live out here, couldn't you?" I was too frozen to tell him yes. Minutes later, I woke. Davy was poking me in the side. Finger to his lips, he nodded east. A lone snow goose was approaching, fighting the wind, making low, questioning honks at our flack of rags. I put my face against the ground, trying not to move. A goose is an easy bird to spook. The loner's honks got louder and more confident as it decided to land for breakfast. It was utterly fooled. I'd actually started feeling sorry for the doomed bird when Davy grabbed my shoulder and spun me so I lay on my back. He jammed the Winchester into my hands. "Take him, Rube." The goose was straight overhead, not 20 feet high. I flung off the mittens and I tried to aim. The gun was too big, but I balanced it out there and yanked the trigger. Nothing happened. Something was stuck. Then Davy's hand zipped out and clicked the safety off. The goose was just beyond us, but still so close I could hear it panting, or hear its panting wings. I yanked again, shot wild, and the recoil slammed against my shoulder into the mud. My ears rang high and clear, and the goose finally understood and tilted off to the left while I pumped another shell into the chamber and fired again. The goose still didn't fold, but caught the wind and sailed over the barley like a kite. Tears were in my eyes. I'd missed 2 easy shots and wasted Davy's present to me. Blind with despair, I fired again. The goose had been out of range, yet somehow it shuddered, went graceless. and made a controlled fall to the ground some 80 yards later away. "You did it," Davy said. "Good shot. You took him the hard way, buddy. Better go finish him." But as I handed him the gun, almost sobbing with relief, Swede streaked past us in her corduroy coat, yelling, "I'll get him! I'll get him!" And Davy said, let her chase the old bird down." So I watched her go, yellow hair bouncing behind her in her stocking cap. Downfield, though, the goose seemed to have recovered its wits. It stood upright, taking stock, its head so high and perky I feared it might take off and fly after all. When it saw Swede coming, it turned and sprinted away. I'm telling you, that goose could run. Seeing this, Swede lowered her head and went full steam, mud and chaff raining off of her boot soles. Dad started laughing, whipping off his cap and whacking it on his leg, while the goose stretched out its neck and bolted across the barley. Reaching the end of the field, it encountered a barbed wire fence. It stopped and turned as Swede closed in. Did you ever see an angry goose up close? It's a different bird from those you've watched flying south or waddling in city parks. An adult goose, in a wrathful mood, can stand up and look a third grader, your sister, right in the eye. And that's what this fellow did to Swede. She got within a yard and stopped cold. She'd seen Dad ringing a few goosenecks and understood the technique. But those had been badly wounded, pathetic birds. They seemed almost grateful to get it done with. This goose still owned its spirit. Later, Swede told me that she felt numb standing there with her hand out. The goose had one blind, clouded eye, plenty eerie in itself. But Swede said that the good eye was worse. She looked it into that good eye and saw a decision being reached. It decided to kill me, she said. From where we stood, though, all we saw was the goose raise its wings and poke its beak at Swede. She spun, slipped to one knee, then was up and shutting the distance between us. The terrifying part for her must have been glancing back and seeing that goose coming after her just as hard as it could. Wings spread, its black beak pointed at her rump. Dad was laughing so hard he was bent clear over and finally had to sit down on a gunny sack, wiping his eyes. Swede led the bird straight towards us. And when she pounded past, Davy leaned over and snagged it by the head. A quick twist, and he handed it to me. Wings quivering. He grinned. All yours, Natty. After Natty Bumpoo, Mr. Fenimore's matchless hunter. I don't know what that means. It was a heavy goose. I realized I was warm, standing there with my mitts off, even hot. I held the goose with one hand and Davy's Winchester in the other, smelling the gunpowder and the warm bird, feeling something brand new, and liking it quite a bit. Swede, though, was crying, her face in Dad's belly, even while he laughed helplessly on. Let me see. Okay, I'll read a little bit more. Swede felt bad about the goose for a long time. For an 8-year-old girl, she put enormous stock in courage. To be routed across a barley field no more, come on, just 4 minutes, please. Barley filled by an incensed goose gave her doubts about her character. He's a really big one. Look at him, I said, once we were back August farm doing the job you might expect behind. Oh, come on. No, okay. Pause for a second. I'm going to go put her in her kennel. Just a minute. I told you, she has to be on my lap like all the time. Okay, where were we? You might expect behind the barn was a hand pump and an old door set across the stock tank for a cleaning table. Davy was whetting the blade of his hunting knife, a bone-handled Schrade. He said, "You want me to show you how it's done?" I shot him. I'll clean him. I had no urge to actually gut the bird, but I was 11 and a hunter now. A man just beginning the span of his pride. Kitty hair. He gave me the knife, handle first. Don't forget, thumb out the gizzard. We don't want sandy gravy, right? As he strode away, I noticed how the clouds had racked up, thick and low, and how the light was going through, though it wasn't even noon yet. Maybe this affected me, or maybe it was just the thought of cleaning out that goose by myself. But I sure wanted Davy to stay. "I'll save out the heart for you," I called after him, and he turned and smiled, then climbed a low ridge of cottonwood and willow brush and disappeared. I had, of all things, a lump in my throat. Luckily, Swede was standing at my elbow and said, "First thing, you have to cut the head off." "Well, I know that." She prodded the goose with her finger, plucked it. It looked pimply and regretful. "Then the wings," she said. Sounds like another little know-it-all I know. You want to help clean them?" Swede let it go and stepped over to the ruins of the grain truck that had been parked behind the barn to rot. She shined up the big rump-like fender and sat there with the wind tugging her hair. It was a cutting wind. The light was leaking from a molten yellow sky. Imagine a sick child, all jaundice and dirty about the cheeks. That's how the sky looked. I picked up Davy's knife and tried it against my thumb, and then beheaded the bird. Watching Swede said, "Forgive me running, Rube." "What?" "I ran away." "From the goose?" "Swede, it wasn't a big deal." I tossed the head into the cardboard box we'd found in the barn and went to work on the wings. They came off a lot harder than the head. I had to saw the knife blade back and forth. "Come on, forgive me," she insisted. I nodded, but said nothing. Those wings were grisly fellows. "Out loud," she said. She was the most resolute penitent I ever saw. "Swede, I forgive you. It's all right now." She hugged her elbows. "Thanks, Reuben. Can I have the feet?" I whacked them off at a chop at a piece and tossed them up into the truck. Swede caught them and scrambled over to the grain bed. My hands were freezing and I dreaded the next part. I ought to have taken Davy's offer to clean the goose. Aiming at a spot under the breastbone, I plunged the knife in. "Swede," I said, just talking so that she'd stay with me. I don't get what's wrong with Davy." She didn't answer right away. She sat on the flatbed, toying with the goose feet. She took so long to speak, I got involved in a tangle of guts and forgot I'd said anything. Finally, she said, "He's mad about Dolly." "Oh, Davy's girlfriend?" How come? She looked at me. You heard, she said, last night, driving over? We'd gotten a late start. As I mentioned, the football team had been busy getting whomped. It was almost 11 before we got on the road. I was sleeping. You were faking it. I could tell, just like me. We heard the screen door open up at the house. Pancakes in 5 minutes, Dad hollered. The screen slapped shut. Really? I was asleep, I swear, Sweeb. Israel Finch and Tommy Baska had Dolly in the girls' locker room. What? How come? 2 boys had gone into the girls' locker room. You wouldn't have caught me in any girls' locker room. I might have even snickered if it weren't for the look on Sweet's face. They beat her up, Reuben, during the football game. Dad caught them. It was only then that the names sunk in. Israel Finch, Tommy Baska. I shrunk up inside my coat. How bad, Swede? She's okay, I guess. I heard Dad say that he got there in time. What? Did he chase them off? Did he fight them? I don't know. He wouldn't talk about it with Davy. Dolly's all right, though, right? I guess so. Swede, a goosefoot in each hand, made them walk daintily across the edge of the flatbed. Then why's Davy mad? Wasn't he happy Dad caught those guys? I didn't even want to say their names out loud. I don't know. Ask Davy if you want. I wasn't sure if I could do that. Though there were only 5 years between Davy and me. Lately, they seemed a very weighty 5 years. At times, it felt like he was Dad's brother instead of my own. Finishing the goose, I held it under the pump until water surged. Cleaning the cavity, then went to the house with Swede. On the way, she showed me how, by pulling a tendon, she could make a goosefoot contract and relax. Creepy. She made the foot into a tight goose fist and said, "You dirty rat!" For a kid sister, she did have a very adequate Cagney, which is a famous person. She was impersonating them. So I'm going to take a break there. So we'll have to continue tomorrow and find out what really happened to Dolly and why Davy is so upset. I love you, as always. Sleep tight, sweetie.